Neuro Creatives Podcast with Josh Crawford.
I'm not about inviting excess stress into my life. Stress will come. It's a part of life. Stress makes us stronger. So I invite the normal stress to come. I'm not one of those people that have to be peaceful and zen all the time. As a matter of fact, I tell people that if you are chasing eternal peace, you will often find yourself in a situation of where you lack peace because you're chasing something that doesn't exist. Stress is a part of life. Suffering is even a part of life. Pain is a part of life. They're all signals. But again, when our mind is so clouded by everything, what we will start to do is catastrophize, right? We turn everything into a catastrophe. And then suddenly we hate our jobs, we hate our spouse, we hate our life. Everything just sucks. And that's not a good place to be. It's not physically healthy. It's not emotionally healthy. And it doesn't really get you connected to what you're here to do on this planet.
Welcome to the Neuro Creatives Podcast with your neurodivergent host, Josh Crawford. This is a positive podcast where we believe in no judgment of self and of others. We remove the societal stigmas of can't and don't by focusing on strengths, mental wellness, and empowerment. Together, we are building a culture of safety and inclusion where no one has to mask. I'm so excited about this episode. I'm excited about every episode, but this one hits on so many levels. So I would love to welcome Hooks to the Neuro Creatives Podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Shawntà.
Thanks for having me.
We are going to dive into everything meditation and mindfulness. So if you're listening to this and you know anybody that has ADHD, anxiety, panic attacks, this episode is going to be phenomenal for everyone. But myself in my life, I have ADHD, high anxiety, panic attacks, and mindfulness and meditation is something that's so easily achievable if you do it right. And Shawntà is here to tell us how to do it right. Any opening thoughts? Because I'm so excited and my brain is pinging in so many levels.
I'll just start by just sharing a little bit about my background and how I got here to ground the audience and my perspective, which is very different from many people that talk about mindfulness. And I have to say, even just air quotes around doing it right for those that are listening. Big air quotes, and we'll come back to that. But yeah, so excited to be here with you, Josh. Again, my name is Shawntà, and I actually work as a keynote speaker and belonging and mindfulness strategist. So what that means is I help people and organizations understand how to use mindfulness and really neuroscience-backed mindfulness approaches to enhance their experience at work or in the organizations that they serve in, and ultimately in their personal lives as well. I did not grow up practicing mindfulness and meditation. I'm actually an accountant by trade. I graduated from college with a degree in accounting, went on to pursue my CPA, worked in public accounting, internal audit, governance, risk, compliance. Josh and I know each other because we used to work together at a Fortune 100 or 200 bank. I've heard two different answers to that. And at the time, I think I was actually working as an automation strategist, a VP of automation and technology in the governance sector. And that job was so stressful. And so it was a bit of a toxic environment. And I, at the time, did not believe in meditation. I was not a practitioner. I am a very analytical, quantitative, I need evidence-based person to understand anything. And I wasn't there yet, and this is, we're talking like 6 years ago. And as a result of working in that toxic environment, as well as life just transforming, I was a new mother. This was a fairly new job, new company. My personal relationships were being impacted by all of the stress in my life, including the relationship with my son's father, which was starting to kind of fall apart. And mindfulness just started popping up. Like it just started kind of coming up at different conferences, just like buzzwords that kept sticking, almost like a bookmark. And one day I heard it explained in such a way that I got curious. And that curiosity led to watching YouTube videos and just choosing to practice it. Like, let me just do this. Like the thing said, set a timer, close your eyes, start with maybe 5 minutes and just notice what you notice. So I tried it. And I noticed things that I never noticed before. For example, I remember very clearly where I was in that meditation in like the spare bedroom kind of a way, in a quiet room. And I remember noticing as I took deep breaths in and out, the clothing on my skin moving slightly. And it was a physical sensation that I just never noticed before. And it was interesting. It was pleasant. And I noticed other things, the temperature of the air passing through my nose and what it felt like for my stomach to expand and go in. And after 5 minutes, I was like, that was actually kind of cool. And that was the beginning, right? And 6 months later, after continuing to be curious and continuing to practice, because that is very important. Anything that we don't know, in order for us to get better at it, we have to practice it. And by 6 months, it was literally 6 months, June to December, I was meditating every day for about 20 minutes a day. And I would have to drive to the Alpharetta office, and I would get there really early, and I would just sit in my car before I got out of the car to go into the office. And sometimes it would still be dark because it was like a 45-minute to an hour drive. And I would just sit there for 20 minutes, play this sound. They're called binaural sounds, which are really just frequencies. It's not music. It's literally just sounds that are meant to stimulate certain things physically and emotionally. And I would do that and then go into the office. And by the end of that 6 months, things were totally improving. I mean, I was getting ideas at my job and in the job that I had, which is a very strategic and ideation-based job, solving problems that had never been solved before, a lot of divergent thinking, like why don't we take this and mix this together? And just seeing answers that I never saw before because I wasn't being present enough to see them. And part of that lack of presence was being so stuck emotionally, feeling like I didn't connect to my team, which, to be quite transparent, I was the only person of color on this team. And I felt attacked every time I opened my mouth. And by the end of that 6 months, I didn't feel as attacked. I felt more courageous. I felt stronger to raise my hand and say, hey, you said this to me the other day and I didn't like it. And I'm going to actually ask you what you meant by that. And they weren't confrontational discussions, but actually resulted in resolution. And so, long story short, things totally transformed. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I started to notice how I had a sense of centeredness that other people in my team didn't have. So I volunteered to lead a session where I developed a talk. And it went over really well. And I talked about my experience and my history with mindfulness. And they asked me to do another one. And that led to starting a community, started with like 5 employees and eventually grew to like 500 employees, and developing workshops and what are ultimately keynotes now. And then, starting my business, again, just continuing on this traction of courageousness and passion and purpose, and slowly but surely crawling my way to where I am today, which, is being a full-time speaker, educator in the space of mindfulness and meditation. Experience creator is like what really the term I like to use to describe what I do. I exited my corporate job exactly a year ago this month, and now I'm full-time pursuing my passion at a time where there's a lot of disconnection. We're post-election. No matter where you fall on the political spectrum, there's a lot of change being introduced to society, and people are nervous and anxious and on different spectrums of emotional dysregulation and central nervous system dysregulation. And so I see my work as really helping people not just get back to center, but get to a sense of acceptance with themselves and their environment so that they can actually be the change that they want to be in this world.
Thank you. I love that. Right now, I don't think there's ever been a better time in my lifetime that we need mindfulness. We need that meditation. And there's so many different definitions of meditation, or I hear meditation and I think of like a martial arts movie where someone's sitting in a field, legs crossed and palms up, hands on knees, palms up, or, in India or something where it's not as tangible to my everyday life and the things that I'm going through. And you, Shawntà, are going to help everybody realize how they can accomplish this in their day-to-day, whether it's sitting in the parking lot for 5 extra minutes before you go into any stressful situation. Or for me, one of the things so I grew up trying to figure this out. Like I said, I have ADHD, high anxiety. I used to get panic attacks in elementary school because of my dyslexia, and having to read or out loud, or if I had to ever go and write anything on the board, even the thought of, am I going to get called on to go and do this, would send me into a panic attack. And it was to the point where I would get cramps so bad that I would ball up. I couldn't breathe.
Mhm.
And my mother took me to the doctors several times to figure out what this was. And we didn't know it was anxiety and panic attacks right off the bat. And what the doctor told me to do was something that I would love all of us to try at some point, but it is, intentionally take a couple deep breaths where you're counting, slowly breathing in, you're counting, slowly breathing out. And then he also asked me, what's one of your favorite places or one of your favorite activities to do where you're always happy doing that? And picture that in your head as you're breathing in and breathing out. And that would literally help my stomach loosen up, help the cramps, help the anxiety that I was feeling. As a kid, dyslexia impacted me because of school. And now in corporate world, ADHD and the inattentive or the hyperactivity or the executive functioning has a bigger impact on me. And what happens throughout the day is you slowly build up that anxiety, or you slowly build up that energy level. And then a lot of people see it as going from 0 to 100 when that hits, but you're actually just going from 90 to 100, and everything else is below the surface that we've been hiding. But being able to meditate or just calm yourself throughout the day at a couple of different points keeps that down from getting to that 80%, that 90%. So you could keep it at 50% all day long intentionally. So I would really love to dive into some of that. If that sparks any thoughts, please.
It does.
add
Yeah. And I
on.
think even just starting with a bit of myth busting, as I love to do in the sessions
Yeah.
that I teach around what is meditation, going back to your comment on, perceiving. When you hear the word meditation, you have a certain image comes to your mind, which is that of martial arts or Eastern philosophy and spirituality, sitting in a forest. And those things are absolutely, I would never say that they're not. I practice, meditation like that. My father was a martial arts black belt. And so my actually first exposure to meditation, even though I didn't pick it up until later in life, was through my dad. My dad was a professional kickboxer specializing in Muay Thai and Taekwondo. And I remember seeing him meditate a lot. And he would just say, I'm meditating. But he also lived a very mindful lifestyle. And what I mean by that is my definition of mindfulness is paying attention on purpose without judgment. And so I'll say that again, paying attention on purpose without judgment. The definition, when you think of it that way, it can be applied to anything, right? I didn't say anything about a certain seat. I didn't say anything about a certain position or a certain spiritual faith. Meditation is a practice. So mindfulness is the mindset. Meditation is a practice, and there are different types of ways to meditate, like so many different types. And that's what's really fun about learning about it, is there infinite ways to practice being in the present moment. Breathwork is one of the most common because we always have the breath. It's always present, and it's something that does neurologically ground us. For me, understanding the science and understanding what's happening in my body, or even understanding why your doctor would say, take deep breaths and then basically do a visualization practice. Well, the reason that your doctor suggested that to you during a panic attack is because when we're in a state of stress and high anxiety, often what's happening in our body is our amygdala is really, really active. The amygdala is the part of the brain that controls your fight, flight, freeze response and your stress hormones. And it's there for a reason. It's there to get you ready to fight because something is attacking you, perceived or not perceived. And then you also have the prefrontal cortex, which is your decision-making center of the brain. And it's a bit softer during those states of fight, flight, and freeze. You also have your central nervous system, which has two parts. Your sympathetic, which is again related to that fight, flight, freeze, and your parasympathetic, which is related to your ability to rest and digest. And so deep breathing, if you were to Google, what's something that I can do to help me during a state of high amygdala and sympathetic nervous system, and typically one of the number one things that's going to come up is taking deep breaths, because the deep breaths literally send oxygen to those spaces, and it's a signal to calm. Just think about it. Like if you're being chased by a lion, you're breathing really heavily. There's certain things that are signaling the brain that it's not safe. But when you slow down and you're signaling the brain either with your words or with your breath, especially, it's a signal to calm down that you truly are safe. And it transitions you out of sympathetic nervous system into parasympathetic nervous system. And so deep breaths is number one. Number two is to change the picture in your mind. If the picture that you're currently seeing is something that is making you afraid, in your case, something related to school or work, then you can change that picture. It's hard to change that picture though when you're in that fight, flight, freeze mode. So that's why the deep breaths come first. Then the ability to see a different picture. See the place where you feel calm, see the place where you feel happy. Because what's going to happen is you're going to invite those emotions. You're going to invite those emotions, and those emotions will literally settle you down. And so when it comes to meditation and mindfulness, the reason that it's important is most of us are not used to that. We're not used to training our body to do those things instinctively. Like I've been practicing meditation for a while now. So when I'm in a state of panic, which I do get in that mode a lot, I'm a mother, a single mother, I'm an entrepreneur. Life is crazy on many days and it feels very chaotic. I totally uprooted my life. I sold my house to free up capital so that I could invest in my business. And I'm in a space that's a lot smaller than I'm used to being in. There are a lot of things that are not quite the way that I want them to be. But the difference between me and others is that I instinctively know how to turn on those practices because I've been practicing it. And a quick tip is, as Josh just said, taking deep breaths in, and we can do it right now, but it's adding counting to it. So count as you inhale for 3, and then elongate the exhale for 5. And so we can just practice that real quick.
Can we do it?
Whoever's listening right now, I just invite you to close your eyes. The reason we close our eyes is to just shut out one of our senses because the sight is usually picking up a lot of information. So we want to shut down some of that information reception. So we close our eyes and we take a moment to just notice where we are, notice where your feet are or your arms, your hands, the position of your body. And then take a deep breath in through the nose for 1, 2, 3, and exhale through the mouth with an audible sigh for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then just take a moment to notice how you feel. Notice any tingling sensations. Notice any tension in the shoulders. And if you do notice it, just simply soften in those places. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And that's just a quick mini technique that didn't require going into the woods. It didn't require going to a meditation retreat. It didn't require any real skill. And going back to your original thought, there is no way to get this wrong. We as humans are so obsessed with getting things right. We've been trained and conditioned to really, really value effectiveness, which is important. And that's actually one of the benefits of meditation is that it can make you more effective in other areas of your life because it's actually stimulating that prefrontal cortex, which is the decision-making center of the brain. But when you take time to pause and notice, you suddenly realize that things aren't as bad as I thought they were. And you notice that you have the ability to actually relax yourself. And even if your mind is wandering and thinking about 5 million things, the thing that makes it mindfulness is when you notice where your mind is. And so what I always tell my students is when they notice their mind wandering during practice, just simply bring it back to the practice. And that may happen 10,000 times in 5 minutes. But every time you notice it, that was the mindful moment. Therefore, you were successful.
Yeah. I'd love to unpack that for a second because
absolutely.
Yes, we are conditioned to try to get 100s on tests growing up. And it's funny, even in the workplace, everybody's like, I have to do this perfect. It's like, no, there are some things that we need to do really well. And there's other things that we just need to do that are sustainable, but not everything can and has to be an A+. And you brought in, martial arts, and it's like, look, unless you've been doing this at Shawntà's level for years and you are a black belt in in
Mhm.
mindfulness, and all the rest of us, let's say we are white belts, where our
Mhm.
mind is going to wander more, and it's going to take a little
Mhm.
bit more practice, and we're going to have to be a little bit more intentional on counting to 3 as we breathe in through
Mhm.
our nose, and
Mhm.
counting to 5 as we breathe out through our mouths. And my mom used to teach Lamaze classes. She was a labor and delivery nurse. And my brother and I are just ADHD off the wall,
Mhm.
bouncing around
Mhm.
the hyperactivity part of it as well. And she would try to have us do this. And we would always just burst out laughing. Like we
Yeah.
couldn't take ourselves seriously enough. But we were also trying to do too much, right? We're trying
Mhm.
to sit with our legs crossed. And basically, like you said, it is what you might picture in a movie. What I have realized over time, it's if I'm in the shower and obviously you don't have your phone, you can't read, you can't do anything other than just shower.
Yep. Yep.
And you do it all the time. So it doesn't
Mhm.
take thought, right? You
Yep.
can do it, you can kind of disengage your brain and just do it.
Yep.
And a ton of really good ideas come to me in the shower where it's like, I wish
Mhm.
I could write them down.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's also if I'm driving and I have a podcast in, I zone out.
Mhm.
And that kind of zoning out, where these thoughts do come in, and now I accept that zoning out. And I know that listening to a podcast will pop in thoughts that, if I'm driving, I just grab my phone and do a voice recording, or if I'm walking, whatever. Even if you're praying or in prayer, and it's kind of, there's different mantras, but if you're
Mhm.
repeating something that you say every night before you go to bed or something else, you know, sweeping. I have a friend where we've talked about where do we zone out the best, and it's for
Mhm.
him. He grabs a broom and he sweeps off his back deck, and it puts you in nature as well.
Yep.
For me, like ironing, I like to iron
Mm.
because you don't have to think much about it. I like seeing the wrinkles go out,
Yeah.
and all of those things. I never put the two together that, oh, this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is kind
Mhm.
of mindfulness, and it calms me, it relaxes me.
Yeah.
Is Are those things mindfulness?
Absolutely. Because remember, mindfulness is paying attention on purpose without judgment. And I love what you said about the shower and, um, you know, kind of allowing yourself, especially if you're at a beginner stage, to make everyday lifestyle habits your mindfulness practice, the mundane, right? Because oftentimes our minds are somewhere else when we're doing those things. Like, let's be, I'm saying, self included. I appreciate the black belt, and at the same time, my mind is doing the same thing that everyone else's mind is doing. It's thinking about, if anything, it's super overactive right now because I'm in such a creative mode. Like I have a book that I'm working on and just all types of ideas and excitement. And so my mind is constantly going, which means that I have to be more intentional. And so something that I recently started doing is when I'm brushing my teeth, and I have a electric toothbrush. And so I'll just allow myself to just really zone into that. What does it feel like for the bristles to hit my teeth? What does the vibration feel like in my hand? And it's 2 minutes. I have the toothbrush is timed, for 2 minutes, and it'll give me the little buzz to let me know that the 2 minutes is up. And when I engage my thought that way, to just go to the toothbrushing exercise, that's 2 minutes of mindfulness that I did that day. And yes, my mind will wander, and yes, I'll think of other things, but it's not wandering as much as it would be had I not decided intentionally to make that my practice. And so that's the biggest thing. It's intentional. It's like choosing to make this thing, whether it is choosing to sit down or lie down and close your eyes and play a sound or a guided meditation, or whether it's choosing to make your work your mindfulness. A lot of times when we're working, we're so distracted and we can't focus on the task at hand. But we can intentionally say, you know what? I'm going to close the pings. I'm going to put my phone over there. I'm going to turn off this sound. I'm going to intentionally create a space where it's just me and this task. And I'm going to be really, really focused. And when my mind starts to wander about dinner or what my spouse needs or what the boss needs or what my employees need, I am going to tune that out. And for 30 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, I'm just going to make this my task. Again, if you're doing it on purpose, and you're not judging yourself in the experience, you're just doing the thing, that is mindfulness. And so you can bring it into the mundane. And at the same time, there is value in bringing a bit of discipline and saying that, you know what, in the morning, I am going to set aside 5 or 10 minutes before I start looking at my phone or before I start my day to just sit, allow my body to catch up with where my mind is. There's so much science behind how effective that is. I think at this stage, I think most of us know that it's very healthy to have healthy morning routines and evening routines and all of these things. But a lot of us are just not doing it, quite frankly. Just like we know we're supposed to drink so much water a day and exercise, and we know what to do. The difference, though, that I will say is like mindfulness, I believe, is really we're at the kind of still the early stage of it becoming truly a lifestyle habit for everyone. And I think my dream is that, say, 10 years from now, or however long it takes, that the way we see drinking water, whether or not we do it or not, but we all know that we should drink water. And most people do. Hydration is a very important part of our life. Trillions of dollars go into hydrating us, right? The way that we see hydration, I hope that we'll see mindfulness that way, to where it's just an essential part of the way we live, because it just helps with so many things. It helps with the anxiety, it helps with us dealing with distraction, which continues to grow. Both of us are technologists, and so we can appreciate the fact that as technology continues to grow, what will happen, and it's a risk, it's a huge risk. What will happen is that we're going to have a risk of greater distraction. But it just means it's a risk. And so, because my background is risk management, well, I just think, okay, well, what's the risk management strategy? What is the control that will either prevent or detect us being in distraction? Well, it's mindfulness, because when you're mindful or when you're practicing meditation, you're noticing where you are. And therefore, you can actually activate an ability to either stop that distraction or just simply notice it and create lifestyle habits where you're preventing distraction from entering. And that looks like, again, when you're working, biggest distraction most of us have are our phones. So a preventative control is when you're working, and especially when you have to focus on a really difficult task, put your phone somewhere else. Just simply put it somewhere else. You can go back to it. And it feels anxious. We feel the anxiety, and we have to be able to power through that. And the more you practice it, the more you get comfortable being uncomfortable. And suddenly things that caused you great anxiety are not as anxiety inducing.
So many things. First of all, you had said no judgment. One of the ground rules I have just in life, in the courses that I teach on this podcast, are no judgment, but it's no judgment of self and no judgment
Right.
of others. A lot of times
Right.
we think, oh, no judgment means of others, but here
Mhm.
intentionally, no judgment of self as well. When you were
Yes.
saying that, I want to take a second and talk about you,
Mhm.
as phenomenal as you are, because you had mentioned that you sold your house and you
Mhm.
downsized in order to I wish I had written it down, but you said you sold your house in order to build capital to help your business.
Correct.
As soon as you said that, I was like, I'd love to reframe that. You sold your house and downside in order to help others. You really haven't said I in any selfish
Mhm.
way whatsoever. I knew you as an accountant and an analyst and a risk leader. I had the opportunity and the experience of sitting in an audience of hundreds of people, very senior level, and you came in, and I knew you as a risk analyst, but you came in to talk to us about mindfulness. A lot of people in the room knew you as one thing, and you were talking about another. And for the first time, a lot of us saw you and heard you in a different light,
Yeah.
and you were so good. I've been facilitating courses and doing train the trainers and teaching people how to engage with your audiences. And you looked like you had been doing this for 20 years.
Wow. Thank you.
And your message hit with every single person in that room,
Yeah.
from every background, both in life and at work. And I had never seen a corporate audience so deeply invested in every word that was coming out of your mouth. And I remember because I was moved enough to get up and go to the back of the room so that I could catch you when you were done. And I had to tell you how incredible that was, because I think you had mentioned this is one of your first big keynotes.
It was.
And I wanted you to know that if there was any self-doubt in your head, to not have it there. And I know you remember this. And then we actually, because someone else came up to talk next and we were in the back of the room and we were talking, but it was like, okay, we need to continue this conversation. We actually moved out into the hallway.
Yep, we sure did.
And huge congratulations on being a year in this. And if anybody ever needed to know how dedicated someone was, how many of you listening would, as a single parent as well, quit a very comfortable, highly successful corporate job to invest in others and sell your house? If there was ever a way to identify how serious you are about this and how dedicated you are to helping others in this and spreading the word and making this as every day as drinking water, I can't commend you enough and thank you enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not trying to go anywhere with that. I'm trying to let everybody know that hasn't had an opportunity to experience your level of awesomeness. Just give you the credentials and let them know you are the real thing.
Wow. I just, it got me a little emotional, Josh. I so appreciate that. And it's one of those things where, first of all, I appreciate you reframing the selling of the house, because that is what it was. I knew that if this was bigger than me. Like, I knew from the second that all the pieces kind of came together, and this is the benefit of stillness. A lot of people really struggle to understand their purpose and their passion. We are all so busy doing our work, doing our lives, that we don't prioritize. And this is where it does get a bit spiritual for me. We don't prioritize the unique reason that we were put on this planet. I truly believe that we all have a unique talent and gift that is meant to serve humanity, to serve the greater good. And like you said, there couldn't be a better time. As complex as life is for all of us today, we all need to take moments to be still, so that, and I love the phrase "so that," because to me, that's the thing that creates understanding. You're still so that you invite clarity into your life. And when you invite clarity, it's like you have a foggy mirror and you're wiping away the fog. And suddenly you see yourself with greater clarity in that mirror. And that's what happened to me. I've always known I'm talented at speaking. I remember at the company we worked for, I did this training experience where it was like a simulation type of environment. And at the end of the simulation, someone on our team had to give a speech. And I wasn't supposed to be the one to do it, but ultimately the way the simulation worked, and this is way before I found mindfulness or began speaking or anything like that, but somehow I was delegated with this task of giving this speech. And I go and I give the speech and I'm just talking, I'm just being myself, being my authentic self. And at the end, there were awards for people that stood out in this training. And I won what they call the ambulance award, because I saved our team with the speech. And they were like, we were just so captivated by what you were saying. And I think that was one of those moments was like, I like to speak. I used to take debate class. I am pretty good at these things, and started to ask, is there opportunities where I can like maybe speak? And they didn't really come. And so after mindfulness, I just created a lane for myself. I, again, just saw the purpose and saw all the value attached to what I was doing and how it could really help people at that time during COVID, where it was high anxiety, high fear, high fight or flight mode, high distress for very real, tangible reasons. And I just felt really compelled to help others. And through that, through stillness and choosing to do something above and beyond, because the way all the work that I was doing was in addition to my job. I had my full-time job, and then I decided to start this community where we were meeting as many times as 3 times a week for me to lead courses and classes and teach mindfulness and deliver practices. And I just did it with this knowingness, this deep knowingness that it mattered. And I knew that the opportunities would come, and even selling my house, it was a bit of a no-brainer. Getting back to the logical part of me, the way the market was, where I knew I wanted to go, it was just like 1 + 1 = 2. Sell the house, free up the capital, be able to serve, and do it in such a way that I don't have to be so stressed, because I'm not about inviting excess stress into my life. Stress will come. It's a part of life. Stress makes us stronger. So I invite the normal stress to come. I'm not one of those people that have to be peaceful and zen all the time. As a matter of fact, I tell people that if you are chasing eternal peace, you will often find yourself in a situation of where you lack peace because you're chasing something that doesn't exist. Stress is a part of life. Suffering is even a part of life. Pain is a part of life. They're all signals. But again, when our mind is so clouded by everything, what we will start to do is catastrophize, right? We turn everything into a catastrophe. And then suddenly we hate our jobs, we hate our spouse, we hate our life. Everything just sucks. And that's not a good place to be. It's not physically healthy. It's not emotionally healthy. And it doesn't really get you connected to what you're here to do on this planet. So speaking is just effortless for me, like it's one of those things where it really is like effortless, but that has to do with the fact that I spend a lot of time working on my energy. I practice Qigong, which literally in Chinese means energy work. And I am very intentional about my lifestyle. I'm intentional about what I eat. I'm intentional about who I surround myself with. That took time though. And I got to where I am though by really honoring pauses. And that's my mantra, honor the pause, practicing stillness every single day, even if it's just for 30 seconds, being intentional about bringing it into my life. And eventually over time, clarity comes. And through that clarity, I'm greater connected to my purpose, which just really invites more blessings and more happiness, because whenever you do choose to serve humanity, humanity will serve you.
You said honor the pause is your mantra, and common sense isn't always common practice. I would love you to unpack that a little bit. What does that mean? Because it can mean so many things to everybody that's listening. So can you dive into honor the pause a little bit?
I love that question. And so the way I explain it is between a thought and another thought is a pause. Just like between an inhale and an exhale is a pause. And when we honor that pause, meaning we don't skip it, we don't go to the next thought, we don't jump over the pause. When we truly take space to honor that pause, it prevents us from getting into unnecessary reaction, unnecessary response, because ultimately what we're doing is we're entering a state of observation. Many times the things that happen in our life don't require reaction or response. They only require our observation. And the reason I say honor the pause is because for many of us, and even again, still to this day for myself, it's not intuitive to do that. Meaning it's not the first thought is to just think, do. We're trained, conditioned generationally, even evolutionarily, we're trained to be that way. And so we have to be able to train ourselves to be a different way. Just like if you want to improve at being a runner, you have to train yourself. You have to condition. You have to do conditioning techniques to prepare yourself to be better at running. And so honoring the pause is a simple phrase that I use and I teach my students to remember that, so that you are literally changing your neural pathways in your brain and you're changing your belief systems. And suddenly you're not just experiencing microaggressions at work, or I know a lot of this audience has experiences with neurodiversity or neurodivergent thinking. You're not just jumping to, they don't accept me, they don't care about me, I don't belong here because I'm so different. That's how many of us show up. And I don't necessarily have any diagnoses around neurodivergence. Although I think I probably do. If I were, like, I think about this a lot. Like, I bet that if I were to really get, a diagnosis, I probably would. Like, I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of thinking. I'm a creative. And I find even statistically, most creatives fall in some spectrum type thing. I see that as a superpower. Like I would never allow myself to think that the way that I am created, my natural state and natural being is, and I hope I don't offend anybody with this statement, but is a disability. And I
Mm,
think I've heard you talk about that before. And I remember the first time I heard you speak, but I want to give you some kudos. You actually really, I don't know that you realize this, you really helped me reframe that because it was a thought that I had for a long time around loved ones who really, they lean into their identity being attached to this label, this diagnoses. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not here to say whether or not that's right, wrong. But when I notice people attaching their identity to it, what ends up happening is they experience greater suffering. They experience greater anxiety and they don't always achieve the goals that they want for their life, not the goals that I think they should have, the goals that they want for their life. And so I personally, even though my mind is always going a mile a minute, every night for the last like month, I wake up at about 3 or 4 in the morning. And sometimes it's really hard for me to go back to sleep because I have so many ideas and so much creative energy flowing through my body. But I would never like say to myself, I don't want that. That's what makes me feel alive. That's what makes me feel the essence of being a human. And so just having good strategies to be able to manage that, like having techniques for when I wake up in the middle of the night so that I can go back to sleep, or creating certain habits so that when I fall asleep at night, perhaps I reduce the risk of that happening later in the evening. That's important for me and my lifestyle and my unique individual nature. But going back to what I was saying, I really remember you talking about this term disability and how sometimes it's necessary for us to reframe these labels and not necessarily see our natural selves as disabled, but to see it as a superpower. Someone that has ADHD and you have the ability to actually be hyper aware, because part of mindfulness is improving your awareness. Most people are not aware. Most people are on autopilot and they have no clue what's going on around them. They're only just doing the same things over and over again. So to actually be aware of all these different things is quite the superpower, especially when you can take a million things that you're aware of and then find the 10 that matter, right? The 10 things that matter, and then do something really, really fruitful. Just about all of the greatest thinkers on this planet have been diagnosed with some form of being on a spectrum with some different type of mental ability, disability. And so I think the more that we start to really step into this place of self-acceptance, especially at work, and as someone that may identify with these different types of diagnoses, just first and foremost, accepting yourself for as you are and slowly but surely reframing your identity and seeing yourself in less of a limited way and more of a I'm quite powerful and this is why way, you start to show up with greater confidence and you start to be able to exploit your gifts and your talents for yourself that benefit you and again ultimately benefit humanity and others and your coworkers and your colleagues and the projects you're working on, at a more micro level. Again, we're talking about superhero stuff now.
thank you, first of all. Yeah, you never know the impact that you have. You hope that it touches someone and helps someone. So thank you. I truly appreciate that. And yeah, the word that we use here in the community that we're trying to build instead of disability is difference. Because
Yeah,
it's just a
that's
difference.
it. Yeah,
It's just a
yeah,
difference.
it's just a difference.
There's your neurotypical, which is about 80% of the population. And then there's your neurodivergent, which is about 20% of the population. And it's different. It's much
Mhm.
smaller, but it's a difference. Two things. One, you had mentioned purpose
Mhm.
and the power and importance of people finding their purpose, and then you selling your house to free up capital for you to chase your purpose. And that immediately popped Patrice Washington in my head, who is a friend of mine and I need to introduce you to. She has a top 1% podcast called Redefining Wealth. And her definition of wealth goes back to like the 12th century, where it was happiness. Wealth is about having the things in life that you can live happily, right? I'm totally botching that. She talks about chasing purpose and not money. And she has a huge following, and everything that you just touched on aligns with that. So I'd love to try and connect the two of you on that, and little shout out to Patrice as well
Mhm.
for everything that she's doing, because that's one of the podcasts that I love to listen to that I get a lot of value out of as well. The other thing you touched on is neurodivergent people. And you are able to bring a sense of belonging to
Mhm.
neurodivergent people at work. And I think you've mentioned it before outside of what we said here on air, but like transformative tools. Can
Yeah.
you can you dive into that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah, belonging is actually when I first started on this entrepreneurial journey, I knew from a business perspective, because I do have an MBA. And so strategy is always at the top of my mind because it's important. It's one thing to have passion and purpose, it's another thing to know how to execute. And so it's like, I can't just lead with mindfulness. Like people don't necessarily know that didn't feel natural to me, right? To just lead with mindfulness. I really wanted to lead with what are the problems that mindfulness solves. And when I thought about all the problems, because there are many of them, belonging was the one that I kept coming back to. And so I actually hired a branding consultant to help me really think through, why am I doing this? What problem that humanity has? What solution do I want to bring to that problem? And belonging and connection, or the problem being a lack of belonging, a lack of feeling seen, a lack of feeling heard, a lack of feeling valued, whether you're at work or at home. Like a lot of us don't feel a sense of belonging in our personal relationships, in our romantic relationships, in addition to our workspaces. And that one was really, really important to me because it's something that I've experienced. I've experienced being the only, I've experienced being the other. I've experienced walking into a room and feeling that people were judging me in a negative way. And the physical feeling, right? The sinking in the pit of my stomach and the lump in my throat and the sweaty palms, the physical sensations that come up when we don't feel like we connect to our physical environment. And it's very problematic. From a personal perspective, it causes stress, it causes anxiety, it can lead to heart disease and other stress related illnesses, which pretty much all illnesses are stress related. And then from a workplace perspective, when we don't feel a sense of connection and belonging, we're stunting our growth in our careers. We're not showing up with our best energy. We're not showing up with our brightest ideas. We're disconnected from people that can actually help us improve on our jobs and our tasks. And so for me, mindfulness was always a tool that I used for myself and eventually could teach others how to get back connected to their workspaces. For example, mindfulness is really good at helping you, again, be really comfortable being uncomfortable. And being comfortable being uncomfortable is important in order for you to embrace your authenticity. If you are someone that identifies as neurodivergent, then you probably feel different a lot. You probably feel uncomfortable a lot. You probably question whether or not you're good enough. What ends up happening is our minds start to go into this negative thought pattern where we're suddenly seeing ourselves and everything around us as negative. And so you need a tool, a practice, a technique that can short circuit that thought, that can stop it in its track. If electricity short circuits, there's a flash of light and then there's darkness. And so we want to stop it. And so that's what these breathing techniques do. That's what practicing doing the conditioning work when you are in a safe environment does. And then when you're in the environment where you do feel attacked or you're experiencing something very real that is making you feel like you don't belong here, being able to bring in those techniques, stopping and taking deep breaths. One of my favorite techniques is visualization because it can really help you just not just see a different perspective, but activate the neuroscience behind changing your reality and activate your ability to create new stories in your mind. That's all our brain is doing, is creating all these different stories like a movie. And when you start to practice bringing in a new story, suddenly that story will become more common in your brain. Even body scan type meditations are very effective in helping us feel that sense of self-acceptance because it's training us to just be where we are. Notice where you are, and then you take action in that moment. For example, if we were to do a body scan, you would just maybe start from the top of your head and then with your eyes closed, just noticing what you notice. Sometimes we hold tension in our forehead. I'm someone that tends to frown and kind of scrunch my face up a lot. And so when I do my body scans, my face is usually the first thing to relax. And then that relaxes. Sometimes I hold tension in my jaw. The scan will allow that to relax. And so then you enter this state of relaxation and then you switch it to the visualization and it's like, oh, I am amazing, dope, smart. I am gifted, I am talented, and you start to pour into yourself this level of self-acceptance that no one else can really do for you. Because if you don't believe it in yourself, it doesn't matter how many people tell you you're great. If when you saw me and you told me that you thought that I did a great job on stage, if I was still in a space of self-doubt and I'm not good enough and all these other speakers are better than me and this is my first time, it wouldn't have mattered if you told me that. I just would have been like, oh, he's just saying that. Then I would have went back to my same routine, non-productive thinking. To kind of put a pin on this, what we're really doing is we're regulating our emotions. We're regulating our central nervous system. And the more we practice regulating that with these techniques, visualization, affirmations, body scans, deep breathing, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. And what is the it? It's regulating your emotions, because it doesn't really matter what difference you have, right? If we're talking neurodiversity, if we're talking LGBTQ, if we're talking race, if we're talking gender, if we're talking veteran, like it doesn't matter what your difference is. The result, the thing that we're all chasing is emotional regulation, central nervous system regulation. And the more we all practice that, the better we get at it. And the better we get at it, the more trained we are in the game of life when those experiences hit us that make us feel, quite frankly, different and a lack of belonging and connection, then we can activate the truth and actually regulate our emotions, regulate our nervous system, and then get back to our ability to accept ourselves as we are.
Too many nuggets to unpack everything. I'm pausing for a second. I'm taking your mantra just to soak all that in. What was your mantra about the pause?
Honor the pause.
Mm-hmm. Honor the pause. Okay. I don't know if you have a title for the book that you're writing.
It's coming.
That might be it.
I think it's actually, and another phrase that I'll give to your audience too is catch, convert, create. You can even say triple C, catch, convert, create. And the way you activate this is when you are experiencing a moment of disconnection, a moment of disruption, emotions going crazy, anxiety, stress at work, then catch is pausing and noticing, just noticing your emotional state, catching it, not skipping over it, honor the pause, but catching it and then converting it, reframing that experience, either using affirmations, I bring value through my perspective, converting that perspective, and then creating, which is like embodiment. Take action in life with that new reframed thought, that new reframed perspective. Take action with the new, not the old. Because oftentimes what we'll do is we'll take action just with the negative thought, and that usually takes us to a negative place. But if you take action and create with your positive reframed thought, because you've done the process, suddenly over time, results start to become more aligned with what you want.
This is the Neuro Creatives podcast. So there's, I love the
there we go. Yeah.
Added into it, right?
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you. I've kind of mashed two things together there with the emotional regulation. How awesome would it be, and tying the black belt together as well? It's like we are all on the path of being black belts in emotional regulation. I'm That's probably right. At a white belt, maybe a yellow belt. Everybody, whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, emotional regulation is, thank you for calling that out. And the intentionality of understanding and regulating your emotions, it's such a key to everything. Yeah. And there's so many things that are common sense that you said, but it never had a name or a grounding or a definition of what that was. I've heard the terms emotional regulation before, but and this is why I pulled you aside when you were talking and doing your keynote, is because you were able to frame so many things that people know that we should be doing, but we don't know how, or we don't know what that looks like. We know we're supposed to do it. We know we're supposed to have it, but we don't know how. We don't give ourselves permission. We don't give ourselves the grace of saying, here's how to start. No one's trying to achieve mastery out of the gate. And here's just a safe, comfortable, non-judgmental way to start doing that, and then just build the habits day after day.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And emotional regulation, I think, is a phrase that I'm glad that we're seeing more of that phrase, or at least I'm seeing it more. Another phrase that I'll offer up to the community is emotional bypassing. And I'm not sure what the gender breakup is with your audience, but particularly if we think about men, right? Most men are, many men, I try to avoid the word most because I've never quantified this. This is the auditor in me. But many men are not raised with respect for emotion, especially depending on when you were born and even the environment you were born in. There are many socioeconomic backgrounds to this, but I tend to notice across all spectrums, many men are not really raised with an ability to really process their emotions. The instruction is often to get over it and to be strong and to be resilient and to be a provider and to work hard and all of these different things. And we could be here all day long talking about, my philosophy and perspectives on this because I have a ton of them. But when it comes to emotional bypassing, and what I mean by that is bypassing, skipping over processing your emotion. The thing happens and you just move on to the next thing. Oftentimes men will do that. And what I offer you is mindfulness as a practice and a habit. A different way to look at it too is it's a container, a space, a physical space, 5 minutes, because sometimes that's all you need, just a space where it's just you and your emotion. And so giving yourself as a man or as a person that identifies in a more masculine way, giving yourself permission to be in that container and actually process emotion in a way that you perhaps were never taught before. And that includes crying. That includes even yelling, punching a pillow, like allowing that energy to release from your body. It is so important. And I'm so glad that science is finally telling this story in a more quantitative way and letting us know that what we're physically doing, and particularly men, is you're releasing energy. There's a buildup. An analogy that I like to use is if you take a bottle of soda and you shake it up, and then you see all the buzzing and you just see it. You see it fizzing. That's what's happening when we're feeling anger or denser emotions, anger, sadness, anxiety. And then you take the top off and it spills out. It spills out. And that usually is disruptive. Now you got to clean up a mess. You have to clean up a mess because it just overflowed and it spilled everywhere, rather than just letting it settle on its own before you take the top off. And then it settles on its own. And then you take the top off and it doesn't spill. It's now just settled. There's no mess to clean up. The emotion, they settled. It still was doing its thing. It still was percolating, but it settled because you created space for it to settle. I'm glad that mindfulness is now in our sort of pop culture and just everywhere right now. And it's being taught in ways that appeal to both men and women because there are different ways to practice that appeal to different audiences. One last thing that I'll say about this, however you identify, using music. Music is an incredibly powerful way to bring mindfulness into your life in a way that it is a disciplined practice, meaning it's not necessarily just while you're doing mundane activities. You're actually setting aside time to do this thing. I like music because one, it's time, right? Most songs are under 5 minutes these days, or you can pick a longer song. You put headphones on, and so you're blocking out some of that outside environment. You close your eyes because, again, you're shutting out your outside environment and you're allowing yourself to just be at one with this music. And you listen to it with it being your mindfulness practice, meaning you listen to it with your full attention on purpose, and you just try not to judge your experience. The judging part is less of the problem because you may get excited or you may feel sad. And even those are emotions, but we're not judging them. We're allowing the emotions to come, but we're not judging them and saying like, oh no, I'm supposed to just be still. If you want to move around a little bit, move around a little bit. If you feel moved to tears, give yourself permission. Nobody's watching you. No one's going to judge you. They're not going to laugh at you like the movie Carrie. They're all going to laugh at you. You're safe. It's like the things that we're so worried about in terms of how people perceive us, they're factually not relevant a percentage of the time. And so when you set aside containers, in that moment, you're sitting by yourself, headphones on, eyes closed, listening to something that may evoke emotion. Allow it. Don't push it away. Allow it. Allow that release. And then notice how you feel after. Because I could say all the things about mindfulness that could possibly be said. None of it matters unless you try it for yourself. And so that's what I really encourage our audience to do is don't just listen to this podcast. Try it for yourself. Notice what you notice. And if it feels like something that could help you, continue to make it a part of your lifestyle.
The soda analogy is so good. I've used volcano, but a lot of people haven't seen a volcano. It's just that picture in their head. They haven't experienced it, but everybody's experienced that soda, right?
Yep.
The other part is when we talk about a volcano, we're talking about it always erupting. I love what you said about, because I need to do that. I get worked up and I explode. Like I said, the surface, I'm not going from 0 to 100. I'm building up throughout the day, and usually start at 50 and then 60, 70, 80, and then I can feel it when it's at 80, and I can feel that I've been shaken up, and I'll just sit there and try to listen or try to go through whatever it is that I'm currently in, where it's like, no, I need to take a break. I need to go and unshake the soda and let it calm down, because that top's about to come off. And yeah, there's a lot of cleanup. There's a lot of cleanup. It's like, okay, this 5 minutes to go unwind or 2 hours to apologize and clean up.
That part. It's your choice.
Right.
It's your choice.
We have a closing tradition on this podcast where I'm going to ask you for 2 words that the next guest will kind of have to mash up together, put into a sentence in some way that kind of ties back to your topic. 2 words for you are symphony and blue jeans.
Symphony and blue jeans?
Yep.
Well, symphony, that do I have to bring them together, or can they be separate explanations?
Try to bring them together somehow.
Okay.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about symphony is, what is a symphony? A symphony is a lot of individual things that make up a whole. And oftentimes when we are perceiving life, we're either only looking at one or the other. We're looking at either the individual things or the whole. And it's all about perception. We have to be able to zoom in and zoom out from time to time, be able to observe the singular flute player and tune in to what they're doing, and then zoom out and see this magnificent orchestration that's happening before us that creates a completely different sound than that one individual flute player. And similar, even with fashion, you said blue jeans, and I think fashion, there's the singular, the one little piece that, if blue jeans can just be a casual piece of clothing, but with the right stylist, similar with the symphony, the right conductor, suddenly that is a fashion. Blue jeans are now like I remember when I was younger, it was all like Jordache, and there was a time where blue jeans didn't exist. And then suddenly they're this huge part of American fashion and global fashion. A lot of things had to happen for that to take place. And so the wisdom that I'm just thinking off the top of my head as you say those words, symphony and blue jeans, is be able to zoom out and zoom in. There's value to both. Zoom out and see the singular thing, the singular pair of pants, the singular instrumentalist in the symphony, and then zoom out to see the big picture, the impact that this one piece of fashion had on a global, it's $1 trillion industry now, that one thing that someone invented, right? And similar with the symphony, that one thing, and it turns into this massive thing. It's magnificent. I'd be remiss, since you said symphony, I think of the late, great Quincy Jones, who died a couple weeks ago, who has just always been such an amazing influence on my life. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. And so music is a huge part of my platform. It's a huge part of my personal life, even my professional life. And Quincy Jones was, in addition to being a magnificent producer, who produced Michael Jackson's Thriller and some of the greatest music of all time, he was also a very talented conductor. And he spent his early years actually training in Europe, but I believe in France, working with the symphonies, like just getting back to the basics of music. And that inspiration, spawned what we now know today, one of the best-selling albums of all time, Thriller. And, similar to the blue jean analogy. So, it's zoom out and zoom in. They both matter. Our perspectives, our individual singular perspectives matter. Our big pictures matter too. The more we start to see both our individual self, be a little selfish sometimes, take care of yourself, take care of the individual so that you can take care of the bigger picture.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome. I knew this would be great, and I was so excited to have this conversation. And with you, it always goes better than expected.
I love it. I love it. I
Thank you
love
so
talking to
much,
you as
Shawntà.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode. So thank you very much to everybody listening. Shawntà, how can people connect with you? We'll put a link in the show notes, but just verbally, how can people connect with you?
Yeah. Check out my website, ShawntàHooks.com. You can also follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn is where I'm most active. Shawntà Speaks on both of those platforms. And if you're looking for speakers or content creators, learning and development facilitators for your teams, your employee resource groups, let's talk. Let's talk about how we can curate a session that will benefit your group so that ultimately they can feel what is another one of my mantras, which is that I belong where I am.
Mm. Mm. Oh, it's so deep. We don't have time to go into I'll have you back on. This is,
Yeah,
like you
so to
said,
do a
we
part
could
2.
go for hours, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll dive into the comments and see what people say. Oh, I want to know more about this, and I want to know more about this, and we'll have the audience questions in there for you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for listening. You are honestly the reason that this podcast exists. If you'd like more information on today's guest, please see the show notes. Also, add a comment to let us know your thoughts. And please subscribe.